Hello! I'm gonna see if people pop up before I really move into things. So I guess I'll just chat about what's behind me for now. This is my middle studio space, which is currently just bare walls. This will eventually become the space where I do shipping and inventory management, so that'll be in the corner behind me. There's a lot of space back there. And then right here is going to become a bathroom and a kitchenette, which will really help me with a lot of the processing steps that involve plumbing, since I have to run upstairs up and down a lot to do that part. All right, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Amanda Presky of Circuit Breaker Labs. I create jewelry and accessories and home goods using broken electronics, so circuit boards, wires, keyboards, any sort of electronic component that I can get my hands on. So the whole idea is to upcycle old tech and create something cool out of it. So it's a pretty complex process, so my studio is set up to handle all of those processing steps. So let me take you through each part of the process through a studio tour. So I'm going to start in the garage. Be warned, it's quite a mess in here because the middle room is cleaned out and I don't have room for all of my stuff in there. So what we've got here is the area where I sort and handle all of the circuit boards. So there is a bit of method to this madness. So this shelf here is all of the new boards that I've just received. And they're all in what I'd call, I guess, their raw form. So they have all the original parts, like RAM slots, peripheral connections, chips. In some cases, some will still have some plastic housings or heat sinks, all sorts of stuff like that still attached. Hey, welcome viewers. If you have any questions, let me know. I would much rather answer questions than just talk into the nothingness. All right, so this is the second stage. So this is where I have removed some of those bulky components so that I can then cut them in to make jewelry or put them on my CNC router to cut those really complex shapes. So what those look like are this. They're a lot flatter. There's no big components sticking up. A lot of the wires have been removed, and they're a lot easier to handle without poking myself. So these are all boards that haven't been punched or cut into yet. So I keep these separate so that if I need to cut out a big new project, I know exactly where to go, so I'm not stuck looking through these boards. These have been punched, turned into projects. This one was a rose, a robot ornament, some rose artwork, some heart pieces, and I think that big square became a paperweight. So these are all sorted by color to help me sort of figure out where everything is. So I've got purples and greens, brown and purple, red, yellow, green, blue, and a whole bunch of really tiny green pieces that are just sort of stashed there. So these circuit board colors that you're seeing are I guess natural, is what a lot of people ask if these are natural colors. These are the colors that they are manufactured with. So the colored layer is called solder mask. So it's just a thin layer. So if you look on the side, it's sort of brownish. That's the fiberglass and copper inner layers. But on the outside of the board, it has this really fun color. The purpose of that color is just to protect the board and the components during the soldering stage so you don't create any short circuits. So the color itself doesn't really matter. It's just that most boards end up being green because it was the first color used, so it sort of became the accidental standard. So now there's a whole bunch of colors, which means it's really exciting because I can make rainbow pieces. But it still ends up being very hard to find certain colors. So like this color, this violet board, they're not produced very much. I typically find them in motherboard form, which is what I'm holding. So I'm really lucky when I can find those. Orange is also very rare, so this is an orange one. So when I'm making design decisions, I'm being a little bit more cautious with those orange and purple boards just because I don't have enough of them to make everything that I want. All right, so now this is my workbench. So this is where I cut down to shape using my miter saw, or I'll use the drill press to handle cutting circles and whatnot. I've got all these hammers and chisels, which are what helps me produce these cleared off boards. I'm not going to show you that because it's really noisy and really messy, evidenced by this pile. So all of these bits here are what I removed from the boards that were on this shelf. And what I do is I sweep them all up into these boxes, and then I bring them to an R2 certified electronics recycler. And what that means is that the recycler is handing them in a responsible manner set by very stringent standards. So I know those boards or components and all those pieces aren't being shipped overseas, aren't being thrown in landfills. They're actually recycled and handled responsibly. So another thing I get a lot of questions about is the safety of doing this. So circuit boards are comprised of copper and fiberglass, some rare metals. Older boards had lead solder, so I'm very careful about how I handle these because I do not want any of that in my system. So one of the things I have is this vacuum system that's set up here, which just sucks all the dust out right as I'm working. I'm always wearing gloves. These particular gloves are coated with rubber, which means that the boards aren't going to poke me and nothing can get through. I have ear protection for working with a saw, and I use these face shields to protect myself from any ricochet, and it's just an extra level of protection for just working with anything. It keeps dust out. Whatever the vacuum can't catch, that will definitely catch. So this is the garage. That's what happens here. So I'm going to take you on to the next step. So I'm walking through the garage. So this is, I guess I'll show you this stuff too. So I do a lot of craft shows. The reason I'm doing this live today is because I really miss meeting and talking with all of you. So a lot of my craft show stuff is stored in here. Can't really tell what's in here, but there's a lot of displays, tables, chairs, wooden bits. There's a tent over in the corner. And being in the garage is really awesome because I can just load up my car and head straight to the show. All right, back through the center room where there's everything and the kitchen sink about ready to be installed. So this is all cleared out in preparation for that. So what comes next is handling the small pieces. So I'm trying to find one. Here's one. So after I've punched out the pieces in that other room, these are what I end up with. So I put them in these metal pieces called settings or bezels, and what it does is it creates this wall on the side that hides the ugly edge of the circuit board, and then I can put resin over the top, and this little cup helps with the surface tension of the resin to keep all the resin in there, so that what you get is this really nice domed surface that's really reflective. It sort of acts like a lens. So a lot of that work happens here, which is why there's a lot of scissors and brushes and files and X-Acto knives and all sorts of things like that to get that process through. And then next is resin. So all my resin work is done in this closet, which is fantastic because it allows me to work on this process at any point in the day, and then I can just close the door behind me, and then I'm not worried about fuzzies or any, currents in the air that could stir up and cause a problem for the resin. So the resin takes about 5 hours to get to a soft cure, and what I mean by that is no longer it's being affected by fuzzies or bubbles or anything like that. But I like to keep it in here for about 24 hours just to make sure it's hard enough, because resin will still be soft after that 5 hours and you can end up with dents and whatnot. So I leave them here. So this is my workspace. I've laid out a couple of pieces that I just needed to fix, so usually I'll wait until this whole area is filled up with stuff and then I'll sit down and do a batch of resin. So just working on wax paper, and my resin, so exciting. Yeah, that's what happens in here. Studio friends! There's Steve.
Hello.
Say hi.
Hi.
He helps me at shows sometimes.
messaged me saying that she couldn't see you. I found you by going to the Circuit Breaker Labs page.
Well, I've got 7 people following right now.
Okay.
So this is what I call my finishing area. So this is dry work, turning all those resin pieces into finished jewelry. So all my tools and supplies are here. I was in the middle of making these copper necklaces right here. So this is all the components that go into that. And I try to sort everything by metal type and item type to make it really easy to find what I'm looking for, since I do have a lot of supplies. Alright, so I also have some other goodies up here, a lot of resistors, capacitors. These are from hard drives. These are diodes. These are voltage regulators. Which usually I end up removing from the circuit board, so I think it's kind of funny that I can use ones that were stuck on a truck for decades and became obsolete. Now I turn them into earrings. And I also have in here a bunch of these capacitors and varisistors, some diodes, a bunch of little components that I use to create some very eclectic earrings. We got some power buttons that I found. Here's another view of the voltage regulators. And more capacitors. Yeah, so I was really fortunate. A contact from the Rochester Institute of Technology knew a guy who had come in contact with a guy who had a huge truck full of all these old components, vintage resistors, things that had just been sitting around in storage for so long that they weren't going to be useful anymore. So I've got these huge rolls of resistors right here. I've got like 5 rolls of these, and they're all different colors. So I've got these beige, I have blue, I have green, I've got gray. So it's really fun to use those because it forces my creativity. So having a very limited color palette, I thought that was going to be a real challenge in keeping up with designing new things and introducing completely new product lines, but it turns out it actually helped focus what I was doing. So instead of going crazy and getting paralyzed by choice, I'm forced to limit my decisions so that what I end up with is a lot of neat things, but they all go together really nicely, which I think is awesome. Okay, so once I finish all of these, so we've got, I've sort of put them in here so they don't get tangled. I have an inventory system for handling all of my finished work. So all of that is sort of this mess of shelves. So this brown unit right here and its match over there were what I started with about 4 or 5 years ago when I wanted to get serious about organizing everything. So obviously I've outgrown those and I definitely need some more. But generally things are sorted into categories. So these are a lot of my raw, half-finished pieces. So a lot of what I'll do is create what are called cabochons, which is just a finished circuit board piece. So it isn't a product or anything yet, just a piece. So what are these this size? It could become a bolo or a keychain. I could make a badge reel, some funky necklaces. There's lots of options for what these can become. So what I do is I create a whole bunch of these. Looks like I used up a lot of green recently. And then I can decide what I need them for later. That also means that if I suddenly get an order for a bunch of things that I don't normally sell, like I just got an order for 6 bolo ties. So instead of having to keep those things in stock, I keep them in an almost finished stage, and then I can quickly finish them up and get them out to the customer. So that saves, 2 to 3 days of time. And then a lot of bracelets. So these are my copper bracelets. I really like the way they catch the light. You can watch the shimmer. These are a lot of necklaces, tie bars on the bottom, and then earrings all the way up from there. And then this is a lot of non-jewelry items. So we've got cufflinks, badge reels, money clips, bottle openers, and belt buckles. So John asked a question. He wanted to know, I think I addressed part of it already about finding like which colors were the rarest, but he also wanted to know my favorite circuit boards. So I pulled out a couple that I thought were really neat. So usually I can tell what something is from, so if I have any experts out there, I could really use your help. I do not know what this is or what it was from, but it's really neat. It's sort of a bronzy color with some green mixed in. So when I get pieces like this that are just so unique, I kind of get a case of where I sort of feel like I have to not use it. I've got a similar one to this that I have used a little bit. So I just use a little bit here and there, wait for the right project to come in, because sometimes something really rare could be used for a very special project. So like this white circuit board, this is the only one I've ever seen. But that piece I posted recently, if you saw the Arizona scene, and it had a moon in the corner, so that's what this moon shape is from. It was really awesome to be able to have white circuit board to do that, because it just completed the piece. It popped so beautifully against the dark blue circuit board. I also do not know what this is from. It says robing control, whatever that means. But this one's also neat. Aside from being a rare circuit board color, solder mask color, the white, it also has a red silkscreen. So most boards have a white silkscreen, so that's what the numbers are printed on. This one is white. This one is white. So it being red is really cool. Here's the other side. So I'm kind of hoping someone has a neat project where this piece will be perfect for that. So this piece I really liked because it's sort of got this like shimmery tiger's eye thing going on, but it's also got a lot of blue spots on it. So it looks really cool. And this is one of my favorite blues. This particular turquoise color is from a Cisco telephone board. There we go. So the components on here are a little bit different than what I'm used to seeing on a motherboard, because this is a phone and not a motherboard, but it's still a circuit board, and it's still got all these really neat traces and details. And all these little swirly patterns are from under the buttons. So if you ever take apart a keyboard, you'll see the same thing on a keyboard circuit board. And then this one's really cool to point out. No other reason other than it's flexible. So I'll try to show you. Yeah, you can really bend it. I don't know why they're flexible, but they are used in television, so they'll go across the front panel where the buttons are, and that's what those look like. So I want to welcome anyone who has tuned in since I started. We're in the finished jewelry section of my studio, and I'm looking to see if anyone has any questions. Feel free to chime in with a comment and I will answer it. So some work I just posted today on Instagram was this piece. So it's quite simple, but I like that it's relying more on the circuit board to provide the interest rather than the shape itself. So what I want to start getting into is using geometric patterns, using one single shape but that tessellates to create a really neat pattern. So I started with hexagons because, well, they don't exactly, I don't know if that's technically considered tessellation, but it fits together in a neat pattern with just one shape. So I'm going to start playing around with color and shape and see where it takes me. But hexagons were easy to start with, just to prove proof of concept, make sure I could get the math correct, because I wanted to make sure the hexagons were exactly cut in the precise way to fit inside the mat. So I'm sure you've seen this. This is a design that I worked on last year. I'm looking to add some more colors. Oh yeah, thanks Jake. That would be a really cool backsplash. I was thinking of using some cut circuit board pieces to create a backsplash for my new kitchenette down here in my studio, but we'll have to see. So this is called Metatron's Cube. I don't understand a ton about the geometry or the math behind it, but what I do find fascinating is how the combination of circles creates this cube shape, and that I was able to find enough different shades of green to really create a pattern within the pattern. So a question, sorry I can't remember, I think Diane asked this question. She wanted to know where I got inspiration for the shapes of earrings of products that I chose. And so there's a simple answer and then there's a complicated answer. So one of the shapes I use a lot is a circle. You'll see that a lot. I use the drill press for a lot of those. Sometimes, yes, the CNC router, that too. I'll show you that in a few minutes. But because of the way the resin flows and the way the surface tension works, shapes with rounded edges, especially circles, take to the resin much better, and they are able to create more of that lens. When I get into more complex shapes, things with sharp angles and points, they don't come out quite as beautifully as the circles do. So I really want that resin to really pop, so I use a lot of circles. But I'll divert from that sort of general design when I'm not using resin. So I've created a bunch of these sort of one-of-a-kind earrings. There's a whole bin of them here, with different shapes. So we've got chevrons and teardrops. These triangles are made from CD parts. Let's see, and then we got some triangles and diamonds, added some resistors in there. So the inspiration for those sorts of shapes are just creating something that isn't a circle, for one, because that's what keeps me interested in doing this too. But just the way what trends are doing. Circuit board jewelry is hardly trendy. But what I can make that's neat is different shapes and how they fit in together. I also wanted to point these out because these are really cool. I came across this board just the other day. Intel had this really cool silkscreen design on their board. It was also matched on their heatsink. And then there's this piece. This says designed by Compaq Engineers in Houston, Texas. And there's a little palm tree on there. I thought that was really cool. This board's really shimmery too. Alright, so this is the shipping area. I don't think I really need to talk about that too much. And this is the CNC router. So yes, Jake, I do use a CNC router, and I use one called Kari. It's made by Inventables. It's a sort of all-enclosed system, so it's got this lid that comes up and comes down, and I really like that feature because that means all the dust from the circuit boards are staying contained and we can just vacuum it up when we're done. So what I do is everything gets mounted on this backer board here. There's clamps to hold it down, and then there's a smart clamp feature here where this router bit touches on here so that it can sense how thick the material is, and then it adjusts its cutting from there. So what happens is this board will move backwards and forwards, and then this piece will move left and right to do all the shapes. If you want to see that in action, I do have videos posted to my Instagram stories that you can look at. Also right now, which is functioning as a computer stand, is my Glowforge. So I use this to laser cut science ornaments and pins and things like that. And then over here, we've got the photo setup. So I use a light box. So I've got this really cool, I guess, I don't know, what is this called? The plans for laying out like a work site.
Like a blueprint?
Wow, I can words. Blueprint, there we go. So what I do is if I use my camera to take photos using a really short depth of field, what it ends up doing is blurring out that a little bit, so you can't quite tell what it is, but it looks kind of industrial, which is what I like. And I incorporate a lot of fun props into my photos, so I've got a stack of a whole bunch of different color floppy disks, metal bits, seasonal things, a lot of lab equipment. There's a condenser coil over there, and there's some beakers and flasks hanging out up here, so that's why you'll see those a lot in my photos online. And then I've also got these silicon wafers, so parts of these would be in the circuit board itself, the chips that are on there. So they start out in this form, but they're really reflective and sort of rainbowy, which is really neat. So when I can, I'll make jewelry out of them, and otherwise I'll use them in the backgrounds of photos because they look really cool. Alright, so that's pretty much the studio. There's more storage over here. Lots of ornaments and things from the holidays. So we've got some candy canes with bows. Let's see. Now that I live in the DC area, I've been making a lot of DC, Maryland, and Virginia shapes. So we've got Maryland, sorry, that's Virginia, and Maryland back here. So those are a lot of fun. So these I would consider very complex shapes, so I absolutely have to use the CNC router to cut those. And then we've got robots. All right, so unless anyone else has other questions, I'm gonna wrap it up there and say thank you for watching and seeing what's in my studio. Jake, I have not done that, I don't think, but there's so many things that I haven't gotten into yet just because I haven't even been introduced to them. My background is in chemistry, not in electronics, so there's still plenty more for me to explore and turn stuff into. Oh, I figure I can show you the keyboard circuit boards. So when you pop open a keyboard, this is what's inside. So these are all circuits printed on plastic. So they're flexible, I can cut them with scissors, I can see through them. So what I end up getting into is being able to create these layered pieces. I'll show you some because they're kind of neat. Because you can see through the keyboard into whatever I've placed underneath it. Well, I guess these aren't that, but these are still layered anyway. So these are a combination of ribbon cable and resistors, which are a lot of fun. All right, while I look for those other pieces to show you, I'll answer, let's see, Sunny's question, where do I get all the boards? So all the boards, well, they're all, except for the pink, they're all upcycled. So they're coming from computer repair stores that are looking to get rid of stuff. I do a lot of events, typically, not now of course, where people who know that this is what I do will bring some stuff from overruns, or maybe they have someone who works in the business and they're just trying to get rid of stuff. So here's one of the layered pieces. So there's capacitors in the background and then a keyboard, circuit board on top. So that's kind of fun. This one is made from the screws from taking apart something. So that's kind of silly. And if anyone recognizes this, you've got the keyboard, circuit board on top, but you've got one of the old style punch cards underneath. So the pink boards, that's a loaded question. I'm so excited to have pink, and I'll show you what those look like. But I was hoping for a little bit of darker color so that you could see the silk screen better. So you almost can't even see the silk screen in this because the pink is so bright. But I think they look pretty cool, and it rounds out the colors. So I can offer pink. There we go. These are little double-sided robots. So, Diane, the pale blue and lilac. I did finally get those, and those, for those who don't know, was part of a Kickstarter project that I did. Here, I'll turn back this to me instead of showing back and forth across my studio. I had done a Kickstarter to try to get the pink, and then I added some stretch goals of lilac and light blue. And the colors are a little weird. It's really hard to do a custom formulation. It's not like working with paint. So I don't understand exactly what goes into the process of formulating the color for the solder mask. But what we found was that it was harder than they thought. They said they could do it. So this is the pink, and this is what's kind of funny is that this is the purple. They're barely different, but when you put them side by side, you can see the difference. The blue board, oh, here it is, really pops. So this one's really neat. And the silk screen really shows up really well. I've got my logo in there, which is a lot of fun. I don't think this is quite the color I wanted either. I wanted something more like a robin's egg blue. But this color I've never seen anywhere, so the fact that it's completely novel is enough to keep me excited about this project. So I'm going to break into these very soon, especially since I have a lot of time now to do that, and start creating like a spring collection, since these are very fun springy colors. To anyone in Rochester, this purple color really reminds me of lilacs, so I know everyone's bummed that the Lilac Festival isn't happening this year, but we can still enjoy it from afar. All right. Well, thanks for joining me. It was awesome to show off my studio. If there's any more questions you have after seeing everything here, I'm more than happy to continue the conversation. And to my artist friends, I didn't really talk much about business stuff, but maybe that could be the subject of the next video, because there's a lot of things I've learned over the years, and studio layouts, coping with business change, things like that, that I think a lot of artists could benefit from. So thank you very much, and good night.